In this lesson, we're going to continue unwrapping the revolver. Alright, so unwrapping can be a tedious process and it can take a little while, but it can actually get really exciting after a while. Once you start seeing all of this come together and you're getting it unwrapped, you're getting closer to the texturing process. So we've unwrapped quite a bit of it with the help of using our smoothing groups and just taking a look at what we have and getting all of that laid out. So what I want to do is I want to just continue on with the different pieces that we've already flattened out. Let's make sure that we're just taking care of those at first and then moving on. So we have this one. That looks pretty good already. We also have this one. That one looks good. I'm not going to worry about those too much. We have the main part of the frame. Let's take a look at this along the bottom. That looks good. No skewing on that either. So we have the sides. Now the only thing that we have a problem with are things like their orientation. We have some parts that are a little bit smaller than others. The checker pattern isn't quite the same size, and so how do we get all of that back together? Looking at all of these parts here. Oops, looks like we have one piece here that could all go together. Let's make sure we get that too. So how do we get all of these to be the same size? Well, what we'll do is we'll pack all of them together, but first we need to get rid of the stuff that we haven't worked on yet. So let's go ahead and take this piece right here. Let's flatten that out really quickly using our planar projection method. So we'll do planar and we'll do Z, and just like we did before, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it to where it's about the angle in which that has been extruded in there, and then I'm going to hit fit. There's our piece there, and then what we could do is scale that in the horizontal direction. Turn off your planar projection there. Scale that just like so, and take a look inside here, and let's make sure that we've got those pretty close to being square, and then we'll just use relax just to tidy it up. There we go. Alright, so let's take all of those parts. Let's close this down. Let's move this guy out of the way. And then I'm going to take all of these that are in here. Okay. With all of those, that's going to be everything else that's on this weapon. Let's move it down and out of the way here. And then let's take all of these that we've already unwrapped, and let's pack those in this area. Watch what this does. Let's go ahead and pull that, and we're going to use this custom pack. It packs all of those in that area. It orients them either in a vertical or horizontal direction. You can change them. You can move them around if you like, but this is just fine for right now. But more importantly, what this does is it gets that checker pattern to the same size. It normalizes the size or scale on all of those UV clusters, and this helps with getting all of the detail that we need to be consistent on our normal map across the object. So, for example, if we had this cluster and it was much bigger than everything else, meaning that it got more texture resolution, we would have this high amount of detail, and then wherever those seams came together, it would immediately drop in resolution and detail, and you would be able to notice like little edges or artifacts, different shading gradients in the normal map, and we don't want things like that. We want to try and stick to a nice, consistent UV size. Now, there are going to be times where you can give something a little bit more resolution than other parts, but they must be different parts of the weapon. Okay, so for example, like the main frame here, we can actually make the handle a little bit larger than the frame because it's not going to be a noticeable change. It's right along the seam of one of those smoothing groups. Okay, so that's another reason that we create smoothing groups. All right, so now that we've got all of that, you could do a little bit of cleanup in here, like pulling these parts around. And we see this, and we're like, okay, yeah, that's basically this guy right here. And so I want to make sure that those stay together, so I know exactly what those do. Okay, like this guy right here, we could say, yep, that's kind of off at a weird angle, so I'm going to go ahead and straighten that up, make that a little bit different. Or actually, you know what, I'll go ahead and I'll just rotate it the same angle as this guy, seeing how those are so similar, and just start packing things together. It's kind of like one of those building games, and you know what classic game I'm talking about. All right, so now that we got this all together, let's go ahead and move on to the handle. Handle is going to be really easy. Watch this. Let's go ahead and go to our selection, and let's say select by smoothing group 2. There's our handle right there. With all of these selected, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to mapping and flatten mapping, hit OK on that, and then with those still selected, let's hold shift and drag those up above here, so that way we're not bothering anything here. If you want, you can actually take all of these, seeing how they're finished, and you can move those outside, and then anytime that we make any changes or we smooth or we reproject, it's all going to go into here. So we've finished that. Let's move that outside of that. So here's our handle. You can see that there are a lot of polygons that are still missing on that. And so we want to figure out exactly where the seams are going to belong on this handle so we can get it all flattened out as it should be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the polygons on one side of the handle, and then we'll select the polygons on the other side of the handle. Let's make sure that we grab these as well. Okay, and I'm just going to come up the center here just like so. We've got enough resolution in this that we can actually just select these and then flatten them, okay, or relax them. Okay, so we've got those set there. I'm going to do another projection, and what that will do is bring those all into one UV cluster. Let's put this in the X direction. See how it looks like a handle there? We've got a little bit of skewing here and there along the back side and on the front side, but that's okay. Not a big issue. First thing that we'll want to do is we want to take care of the skewing that's on the main portion here. So let's scale that in the vertical direction, and let's go ahead and turn off planar mapping. Let's scale that up to where we get these nice little squares here. Let's get it close. Okay, so it looks pretty good. And with that, we'll come in and we'll use our relax. Relax by polygon angles, and that's going to flatten all of those out. Notice we still have our nice square pattern, and then we also get that square pattern along the back side that's no longer skewed. All right, looking really good so far. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll move this guy out of the way. Grab your move tool, just move that out of the way, and let's select the other side. So we'll come in and we'll just select those polygons. Okay. And make sure that we get all of those. And we're going to repeat those steps. Now, notice I'm not going up into this part right here. We've already unwrapped that, and that's part of a different smoothing group, so we want to be very careful with that. Great. So with these, let's make sure we get the top. Perfect. Oops. Let's make sure we deselect any of those. That can happen, and that's one of the downsides of using the ignore back facing. Okay, whenever you're control clicking and selecting multiple faces. So now with that, let's go ahead and use the planar projection. Let's use the X direction, and then let's go ahead and scale that in the vertical direction. Turn off your planar map projection. Scale that. Get that as close as possible to being square on the main portion of that. And then we'll use relax. So that way it doesn't have very far to go in the relax. Now notice that that flipped around there. I don't like it when it does that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control Z one time. Then I'm going to right click and mirror horizontal. And then we'll go ahead and we'll relax that. There we go. So now we've got that handle. We've got that all set up. And then there we go. So now we've got the handle parts. Now we need to go ahead and get the rest of the little pieces here. Most of these will be okay for the most part, but we may have to come in and just make a few changes. And so we're going to take care of the rest of these pieces here in our next lesson.